Hello everyone, welcome to an introduction to Markstrat. In this video I'm going to just go through these slides and talk about what the simulation is all about. This is broken up into two parts, so we'll help you with the monotony and all. So I do recommend that you watch it fully, both part 1 and part 2, because they will be very helpful once you get to the simulation portion of the course. Okay, so first of all, what is Markstrat? Markstrat is just simply a simulated environment where you will, through the internet, you will be in charge, you and your team will be in charge of managing the brands for a company, okay? And so you get to make all the marketing decisions. So if you think about the marketing mix, product, price, place, promotion, you'll be making all those decisions for this particular company, okay? Your company sells cosmetics, all right? So they sell two types of cosmetics, something called clinites and something called neutrites, and they're fictitious product category names. In this course, we're only focusing on the clinites. You don't have to worry about the neutrites at all, okay? So you will be competing against other teams, and what you'll be doing is just trying to maximize the value of your firm based on the marketing decisions that you make. Okay, so you'll be getting new data each period. You will get a stock price or a share price index, as they call it, each period to help you see how you are performing relative to your competitors. Okay. So you'll be making 8 simulated, 8 sets of decisions across 8 simulated what we call rounds or periods. Think of each period as a year. So you get together with your marketing team and you're going to decide what you're going to do for the next year in terms of what products you're going to sell, how you're going to price them, where you're going to sell them, and so on and so on. So you'll get to make all these decisions. You can create new products if you want. There's lots of different things that you can do. Okay. So that's kind of how this works. So let's talk a little bit about the Markstrat world first. Okay, so in the Markstrat world, there are about 80 million people. Okay, most of them are in the majority of them are in urban or smaller urban areas, and you also have rural customers as well. It's a large country, pretty good economy. Low inflation and GDP growth or GNP growth. The currency is the dollar, okay? And so you'll be competing against other teams and trying to capture market share and thus firm value. You are given a budget each period of X million dollars that you get to choose what to do with it. Are you going to hire salespeople, or are you going to boost advertising? There's a number of things you can do with the money. So every period you get this budget. The budget you get depends on how well you did the last period. The better you did, the more money you get. Okay. Something to note right up front about the budget is you can't save money from one year and use it the next year. It's kind of a use it or lose it situation. This is very common in companies. Is what, any allocated money you don't spend, you lose, and so you have to lose it. Okay? Well, you have to spend it, otherwise you lose it. All right, so you'll be starting out with 2 brands, 2 Clinite brands, and you can choose to create up to 3 additional brands. So you can end up with 5 different brands that you're offering in the marketplace. All right. These Clinite products that we're talking about, they're based on 6 different attributes, and these are attributes that you can, focus your advertising on, or physically change via R&D to create brand new Clinite products. Okay, all of these attributes, except for base costs, are rated on a scale from 10 to 100. Okay, so efficacy, does it work? Safety, how safe is it for you? What does the packaging look like? pleasure is, do you enjoy the product, and usability is how easy is it to use, basically. Okay. So each team is a letter. Okay, so there are up to six teams in the industry. Each one just is given a letter. Okay, and so with that, you can tell basically what brands belong to what companies. So if your company L, for example, all your brands are going to start with an L. If you're team T, all your brands are going to start with a T. The second letter in our situation, the I is the Clinites, and the Clinites, I indicates Clinite, so you'll know it's a Clinite. And the last two letters, you can choose what you want. And so when you make new brands, you can kind of come up with funny names that start with your team letter, and then an I, and then two more letters. Okay, if you remember back to segmentation and targeting, we have 5 different segments that you can choose to target or not in the simulation. We have high earners, affluent families, middle income families, low income families, and singles. And they all have their own kind of attributes. High earners and affluent families, quality over price. They don't really care what it costs. They're willing to pay more money. Low income families, they're very price sensitive. It doesn't really matter what the other attributes are. Medium income families, there's kind of somewhere in the middle. Singles are kind of somewhere in the middle as well. They tend to be brand switchers a lot of the time as well. You can sell these products through 4 different channels: specialized mass retailers, mass merchandisers, department stores, and then beauty specialist portals. Okay. Specialized mass retailers are like CVS and Walgreens, places like that. Mass merchandisers, we're talking Walmart, Target, places like that. Department stores, larger, stores that have makeup counters. I think about Macy's or Dillard's. And the beauty specialist portals, these are online beauty product only websites where customers can go online and not have to go into a store. Okay, all right, managing your firm. Okay, so again, your goal primarily is to maximize your stock price. That means that you are maximizing the value of the firm. Okay, we really want to focus on contribution. Remember, contribution or contribution margin or unit contribution is price minus variable costs. And so for every unit you sell, you kind of add those contributions together to get kind of net contribution. So the more products you sell, it's going to, increase your contribution, assuming that the contribution per unit is positive. And it better be. If not, you'll be in trouble. Okay, so basically, you're going to take a lot of data. You're going to do some market research here. You're going to take this data. You're going to wade through this data. And you're going to use that to come up with some sort of trends, some sort of ideas, and then from that you're going to develop some sort of strategy. Okay, so there are lots of reports. They're going to be a little overwhelming at first, but as you go through this, it will become much more clear and easy to use, and most people typically enjoy the experience of going through this. Okay, the marketing mix. You get to decide how many units to produce, how you're going to price your product, and how you're going to segment the market, target the market, and also advertise to those targeted segments. Commercial team. Okay, so something you have to know about this and wrap your head around is the fact that you are the manufacturer of these products. You are not the retailer. So you actually have a commercial team, salespeople, if you will, and their goal is to get your products into retailers. Okay, we already talked about the different channels or retailers a minute ago. That's what your sales team does. Your sales team does not sell to individuals, it sells to retailers. Okay, so you get to allocate, hire and fire salespeople to promote your different brands across the different distribution channels. Okay, market research. You'll be using part of your marketing budget to order reports that you will get the next period that will give you information to help you make informed decisions. All right, production planning. We just mentioned this briefly. This is a very tricky part of marketing is you're trying to predict how many units are going to be sold in the next period. So there's a little bit of a crystal ball kind of vibe to this. You're making an educated guess, so you have to be very, aware that it's not an exact science. Okay, so each period you can increase, you can decrease how many units you order to be produced. Units that aren't sold carry over to the next period, so then you can sell them in that period. It will require you to adjust your production levels. Okay. You want to minimize units left over because they carry an inventory holding cost, which is a problem. But you also don't want to completely sell out because that kind of gives you a double whammy. That's lost revenue, but it's also revenue lost to a competitor. So market share kind of shifts from you to someone else, and that's not good. Okay. To kind of help you with production planning and trying to minimize the number of units left over or the number of units you lost out on selling because you didn't produce enough, the simulation will actually adjust your actual production plus or minus 20% to respond to actual demand. Okay, so if you say let's produce 100,000 units and demand actually ends up being 110,000, the system will adjust up and go ahead and produce that additional 10,000 and to give you 110,000 total, so you can meet all the demand for your particular target market. Same thing, the opposite direction. Let's assume you ordered 100,000, but the demand was actually 90,000. It will adjust downward, kind of reduce the number produced to allow you to perfectly meet that demand. Okay, so there's this adjustment feature, but it has boundaries. It only will work up to plus or minus 20%. So if you say let's order 100,000 and your demand is actually 130,000, it will produce 120,000 for you. That 20% bump is the most it can do. Okay, so again, just allows you to reduce the number of units left over or reduce the number of units lost out on if you sell out. Okay, so you'll specify that. So here's just some production planning decisions. You think there'll be, for the top one, you'll have 180,000 units sold. You've got 30,000 in inventory. So you need to produce just to get up to that 180. So 180 minus 30 is 150. So 150,000 you decide to order. Actual demand for your product is 154,000. The simulation is going to reduce that 150 down to 124 to allow you to perfectly meet demands. You'll end up selling the 30,000 that you held over from last period plus 124,000 new ones that you ordered. Okay. The second one is pessimistic. Okay, so you anticipate 110,000. You've got 30,000 in inventory, so you need to order 80,000. Your actual demand is 154,000. So what the simulation will do, it will adjust that $80,000 upward, but only up 20%, which gets you up to 96,000%. So you still end up losing out on 28,000 units, which is not a good thing. And the bottom one I won't go through in detail, but it's the optimistic one where you basically end up with a bunch of inventory left over because you ordered way too much, and after the 20% reduction adjustment, you still had a bunch of units left over. Okay. All right. If you sell out, you can make this quick calculation. You can basically go to a report called Consumer Survey and Panel and determine what total purchase intentions were, and subtract from that what the total market share was, and the difference is going to be how many sales that you lost. Okay, so Consumer Survey and Panel is a very important report. You should take a look at it for sure. Pricing, you get to set a price, and what you're doing is you're setting a MSRP is suggested or a recommended retail price. Okay, so that's not the price that you'll receive for every unit sold. That is just the price that you recommend that your retailer sell it for. By law, they can't demand or can't expect or can't set the prices for the retailers. They just set a price that they think the retailer should charge. Okay, but the money you actually get depends on distributor discounts, first of all. So some retailers may say, well, I'm going to take 10% off that MSRP, and that's the price I'm going to charge to the consumer. Okay, so that's going to reduce the amount of money you make per unit sold. But the bigger issue is distribution margin. So basically, distribution margin is just what percentage of the selling price is the distributor keeping for themselves. You know, Walgreens, for example, they don't sell manufacturers products for free. They take a certain percentage of the proceeds for themselves. Okay, so the margin may be 30%, maybe 40%. So anyways, after distributor discount, after distributor margin, whatever is left over is the price that you get. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Okay, so I mentioned margins and I mentioned discounts. We have 4 different channels we already talked about. Know that mass merchandisers and beauty portals take a 10% discount off of the MSRP, and that's the price they charge to consumers. The specialized mass retailers, they take a 5% discount off the MSRP. Department stores take no discount off. Okay, so that gets you a retail price, and then those retailers take their margin. Okay, so mass merchandisers take 30%. Specialized mass retailers and beauty portals take 35%. Department stores take 40%. Okay, so you take the actual retail price, and then you take away from that the distributor's margin, and what's left is the selling price, and that's the selling price for you, the manufacturer. Okay, so again, if this example, if you set a price of $15 for every unit sold in the mass merchandisers, you're going to get revenues of $9.45. Okay, for specialized mass retailers, it's $9.26. For department stores, it's $9, and for beauty portals, it's only $8.78. So you can see that the amount of money you get greatly is reduced once you consider these discounts and these margins. All right, transfer cost is basically cost of goods sold. Okay, so if you subtract that from the selling price, you get the unit contribution. Okay, so you're going to make $4.70 profit on each unit sold through mass merchandisers, $4.51 through specialized mass retailers, and so on. Okay. Advertising. You use advertising to build awareness. So basically, you can just determine an advertising budget. The more money you spend on advertising, the greater the awareness for your brands is going to be. Okay, so you want to get your brand awarenesses up, especially in those segments that you're targeting. Okay, you want to get those numbers to around 70%. Once you get into 70%, you're pretty good. If you're at 50%, you should probably increase your spending. If you're at 80%, you can probably cut back spending a little bit. Just try to get around 70%. Okay, so if you think back to the AIDA model, the first battle or the first challenge is to build awareness, and that's where advertising comes into play. All right, commercial team. With the commercial team, you're doing 2 things. You're basically hiring and firing salespeople. You specify how many people you want selling each brand in each channel. Okay, so any one salesperson sells only one brand and only to one channel. Okay, so if you look at this table, the brand Mint, you've got 15 salespeople selling Mint to mass merchandisers. You've got 10 people selling Mint to specialized mass retailers, and so on and so on. Okay. Okay. So another part of commercial team is merchandising. Okay. You can actually allocate money that is spent to help merchandise the products within the retailers. Okay. So if you've ever been to Macy's or Dillard's or CVS, You know how they have the little counter or they have the signage that kind of promotes the makeup brands? That's kind of what we're talking about when we're talking about merchandising. It's just money that is allocated to help promote the brand within the retail environment. Okay? All right. So here's the marketing budget we talked about a little bit. Okay? If you spend more than you are given, the simulation doesn't like that, and it will kind of cut away some of your decisions. So you want to make sure that you kind of spend within your means, just kind of like in the real world. Okay. Profit and loss. Basically, the greater the profit, the better. You can use this table to look at how you've done in terms of profit and loss compared to previous periods. This company has, from between period 4 and period 5, had a huge jump, and from 5 and 6, they had a huge drop. Okay, so not as important a table as a lot of the other ones in the simulation, but just know that it is important for sure. Okay, brand contribution. Again, brand contribution is price minus variable costs, and you multiply that number by the number of units sold, and that gives you kind of total brand contribution. So the variable costs in this are basically cost of goods sold and inventory holding costs. Okay, but we go a little farther in the simulation. We also then subtract out the cost of advertising and the cost of the commercial team to arrive at a final contribution after marketing. Okay, so you could argue that the advertising is fixed, and technically it is, but in the language of the simulation, we're going to kind of treat those as we would a variable cost. So you want to try to maximize contribution after marketing as much as you can. All right, so getting started. At the time you're watching this video, hopefully you're far away from this, but basically you will get to this shortly. So you are going to be part of a team, and you need to get to know your team and start to map out a plan of action. Okay. In the first period, there are some things that you're not able to do. You can't modify any brands yet. There's a number of things you cannot do, but it just kind of allows you to kind of get your feet wet slowly. So you'll be taking information, coming up with some sort of strategy, and then developing some decisions. Once decisions are made, there is a deadline. So once that deadline passes, I, as the professor, will press a button, and it will take all the decisions that every team has made and throw them together and spit out new stock price, new market share, new all kinds of information. And then we'll continue again with period 2, and then we do it again for period 3 and period 4, all the way up through period 8. Okay. So it's important to know that there is a lot of information. There is going to be some significant information overload up front. If you don't feel frustrated early on or overwhelmed early on, then you're not trying hard enough, okay? But it does subside after a while, I promise, so just be careful, okay? In your group, you may run into some situations where you and your teammates don't agree on things, and just know that happens. It's normal, but just talk your way through them and figure things out, okay? And there is time pressure because we do have deadlines. And so the first couple of weeks of the simulation, there's one of these sets of decisions due that week. And then as we get later in the semester, there are actually 2 sets. So there's a lot of constant work going on between you and your group. So want to make sure that you guys get a start, start off on the right foot. Okay. All right. So if you haven't accessed the simulation yet, here's kind of how you do it. You go to stratexsimulations.com, you enter your participant activation key that was given to you when you registered, and then there's also a team password that I give you. Okay, you use those 2 to log in. Every member of the same team has the same 4-digit password. The packs are going to be different, but the 4-digit passwords are the same. So that's kind of how you log in. It's pretty simple. Okay. All right. So here's kind of a preview of some screens that you will see within the simulation. Okay. Each of those different colors is a different category. You have some reports that are related to just your company in specific. Some reports are related to the market as a whole. Some of these reports are market research studies that you have to order as part of your marketing budget. Okay, and over on the far right where it says decide, those are where you're actually going to physically make your decisions. Okay, all right, and that's the end of part one. I will hope that you watch this completely. If you don't, then you won't be hearing this, obviously, because you wouldn't have gotten this far. So please take a break and then go watch part two, because you definitely need that one as well. Thanks.